What is the Jeep Magneto? Well, in my opinion, it's the best rock-crawling supercar ever conceived. And yes, it's an EV. A year ago, Jeep showed us the Jeep Magneto 1.0, which was basically an electric equivalent to their stock V6 Jeep Wrangler. Now this year, we got to see the Jeep Magneto 2.0 just a couple days ago at their annual Easter Jeep Safari, where they show off their concept models. The 2.0 is a pure monster of performance. Why? Let me explain. No, let me sum up. First off, it's the torquiest stock rig on the planet. It has over 60,000 pound-feet of torque available at the wheels in low range. To put that in perspective, that's about twice as much as the average four-wheel drive diesel truck in low range, or about 5 times as much torque as the Hummer EV. Where does it get all that torque? Well, 850 pound-feet of torque come out of the electric motor's crankshaft and into a manual 6-speed transmission. Yes, a manual transmission made it to an electric motor. Pretty cool. First gear in the manual transmission has been toned down a little bit to 3.36 to 1 from the usual 5.13 to 1, which you find in the top model Dodge Chargers. Then it goes into the stock Jeep Wrangler transfer case, which is a 4.1 to 1. From there, it splits off to a Dynatrac 80 rear axle with a 5.38 to 1 diff, and Dynatrac 60 axle in the front with also a 5.38 to 1 diff. When you multiply up all the gear reductions, you have a little over 74 to 1 crawl ratio, and when you multiply that by 850 pound-feet of torque coming out of the crankshaft, yes, you have over 60,000 pound-feet of torque coming into those wheels. The two-door Magneto that Jeep was showing off in Moab came with King shocks, a 3-inch lift kit, and 40-inch tires. They pushed the front and rear axles out 6 inches from what the current Wranglers are, adding a total of 12 inches to the wheelbase. This gives them an awesome angle of attack and departure. Just like the Wrangler, the Jeep Magneto can have front and rear locking differentials as well as a sway bar disconnect. 2 key benefits to rock crawling with an electric motor are number 1, you can't stall out, and number 2, you don't have to worry when you get on those really steep inclines about your engine seizing because your oil drained into a corner. This thing is an absolute off-road beast because Jeep is an absolute off-road beast brand. And putting an electric motor in there does not hurt the situation. To me, what really makes it a rock crawler is that you can modify it any way you want. Any way you can modify a Jeep Wrangler, you can modify the Jeep Magneto. If you want to throw an Atlas transfer case in there and be able to do your nice pretty front digs, you can do the same turning radius shortening trick that the other electric trucks can do with their independent motors. Speaking of independent motors versus single motor designs, I think Jeep made the right choice in making their Magneto a single motor, because when you have a single motor and your wheels are bobbing in the air, you don't lose any of your torque and horsepower potential. Versus if you go like the Rivian and have 4 independent motors, when those wheels start bobbing in the air, you lose a quarter of your power every time one of those wheels goes in the air. The Jeep, you can stick it on one wheel and it still has all the torque available to hit the ground. Really, the Jeep Magneto 2.0 is just the same as a Wrangler with performance parts and an electric motor instead of an internal combustion engine. You operate it the same way. All the controls and buttons inside the cab are identical to a stock Wrangler. Now, moving on to a specification that has historically not been Jeep's strong point, and that is on-road power and 0 to 60 time. For on-road power, the Jeep Magneto has 625 horsepower, and probably much more than this during their short-duration, quote, electric nitrous oxide mode. This Jeep Magneto has a 0 to 60 time acceleration of 2 seconds flat, albeit they're probably not counting the first foot of rollout. Now, to put that in perspective, that is just as fast as the top model Tesla Plaid. That's utterly crazy. That's a lot faster than most supercars in the world. If we plug this insane 0 to 60 time into a kinematics equation, we see that on average the Jeep Magneto was accelerating with 1.37 Gs, or if we make a rough estimate for rollout, 1.2 Gs. Now, I know you've all got your wallets out ready to put the down payment on this Jeep Magneto, but are we actually going to be able to buy this rig? Because we all know Jeep has showed a lot of awesome concepts like the Hurricane that never came to fruition. Based on what we've heard from Jeep designers and executives, we're not going to see a part-for-part Jeep Magneto 2.0 on the floor of the dealerships. And there are some needed modifications. They told us that the battery pack is only 70 kilowatt hours, and if you use the weight, the Jeep Magneto 1.0 was about 5,700 pounds, so this one's gonna be a little bit heavier, and you use the drag coefficient of a Jeep Wrangler, it's probably only going to have a driving range of about 120 miles. That absolutely stinks. For the real production model that is supposedly coming somewhere around 2024, they will probably have to lower the power down a little bit, so not quite as insane of performance, and then that driving range will come up, especially if they give us a 4-door model that you can throw a bunch of extra batteries in. One very hopeful thing that the lead Jeep designer said was that they want to give people a lot of options. A monster trucker performance with horrible range, or a nice daily driver that can do some cool rock crawl. And I really like that. Options, great. The one thing that it sounds like is gonna go is the 6-speed manual transmission. That's kind of sad, but you don't really need it in an electric car. A 1 or 2-speed automatic transmission is just fine. Now, they are gonna keep their transfer case as far as we can tell. That's awesome. We need a high and low range for real rock crawling. And they are gonna keep their single motor setup as far as we can tell. And that's also a must-have for rock crawling. Thanks for watching Redneck Physics.